Since North Korean troops entered the Russia-Ukraine war, the initial reports painted a tragic and ruthless picture. They not only endured harsh conditions, relying on dog meat to survive, but also became victims of unimaginable cruelty. For these North Korean soldiers, this war was nothing less than a pre-signed death sentence. Russia has resorted to incinerating the bodies of North Korean soldiers, obliterating their faces and identities to erase all traces. What seemed like rumors were confirmed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in a post on X, formerly Twitter, on December 16, 2024. He shared a 31-second video showing Russian soldiers burning corpses on a snow-covered slope. The accompanying caption emphasized Russians attempt to hide the faces of North Korean soldiers even after their deaths. The incident reportedly occurred in the Kursk region, a hotspot of intense fighting. It's horrifying. No one could have imagined such brutality. With their bodies burned beyond recognition, these soldiers lost even their final vestige of identity. So the question arises, why would Russia resort to such extreme measures? The answer lies in desperation and fear of exposure. According to Ukrainian intelligence and international observers, at least 10,000 North Korean soldiers were deployed to the conflict, marking the largest military presence ever by a nation not directly involved in the war. The collaboration between Russia and North Korea, cloaked in vague statements about military cooperation rights, is, in truth, an embarrassment for Moscow. It silently acknowledges that the Russian military is no longer capable of sustaining the war without relying on one of the world's most isolated and oppressive regimes. By destroying the bodies, Russia not only seeks to erase evidence of the North Korean presence, but also to conceal its own massive losses. From February 24, 2022 to December 24, 2024, Russian forces suffered devastating losses, with over 777,720 soldiers killed, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Despite their relatively recent deployment, North Korean troops have also faced staggering casualties. At least 10,000 North Korean soldiers have been sent to fight, Ukrainian intelligence reports. This marks not only the largest military engagement by North Korea in any international conflict, but also highlights the calculated sacrifices of a regime willing to trade human lives for political gains. However, the price paid by North Korean soldiers on the battlefield is unbearably steep. In just the first few weeks of deployment, over 3,000 soldiers were killed or wounded, a shocking figure, even to those familiar with the horrors of war. In the Kursk front lines, where the fighting was fiercest, reports detail casualties rising at an alarming rate. For instance, within just 1 week of clashes in areas like Plakovo, Vorozhba, and Martinovka, 30 North Korean soldiers were killed and dozens more severely injured. The situation worsened in more intense battlegrounds like Kursk, where reports indicate some units lost 40 to 50 soldiers in just a few days. Even intercepted communications have revealed the scale of this catastrophe. In a phone call disclosed by Ukraine's security service, SBU, a nurse at a Moscow hospital described trains filled with wounded North Korean soldiers from Kursk, up to 200 arrivals in just 2 days. These soldiers often arrived in critical condition, and many did not survive, even after being transferred to major hospitals. The death toll is so staggering that many analysts have called this less of a battle and more of a systematic slaughter. For an inexperienced and ill-prepared army, this truly represents a collective death sentence, determined from the moment they stepped onto the battlefield. For Kim Jong Un, however, sending North Korean soldiers to Russia is not a tragedy. It is part of a calculated strategy. According to US officials, Kim does not expect any immediate rewards from Russia. Instead, he is betting on long-term benefits, Russian support in diplomatic disputes, future crises, and most importantly, access to advanced military technology. It's a cold calculation that disregards the lives of the soldiers under his command. This also explains why Kim chose to send his least capable troops. The soldiers deployed to Russia are poorly equipped, barely trained, and considered to have low combat value. Kim appears to have deliberately chosen individuals he deemed the most expendable. He knew full well they would face certain death on the battlefield, but that did not stop him. Their fates were sealed from the start. Some argue, however, that this is all Kim has to offer. Western media and nations, including the US, may have been misled by North Korean propaganda about the strength of its military. What do you think about this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Returning to the main issue, Kim doesn't need to see the charred faces of these soldiers to understand their suffering. He authorized it. And now he is reaping the benefits of these actions. For Vladimir Putin, the situation is no different. While Kim plays a long game, Putin is focused on a singular goal, his own survival. He needs North Korean troops to fill gaps and reduce the casualty rate among his own forces. Hiding the truth about the presence of North Korean troops has become a critical part of Putin's strategy. The world must not be allowed to see Putin's desperation. This is why Russia has employed the most horrifying measures to conceal the identities of North Korean soldiers, including burning the faces of the deceased. This is not just a tactic to erase evidence, it is a clear message. The lives of these soldiers are worthless in the eyes of the Kremlin. Russia has taken every measure to obliterate all traces of the identities of North Korean soldiers from the moment they set foot in the country. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, North Korean soldiers were even forbidden from showing their faces during training. The Russians tried to eliminate all video evidence of their presence. To mask the presence of North Korean troops, Russia implemented a series of elaborate camouflage tactics to erase their identities. These soldiers were issued fake documents that listed Russian-style names and places of birth. Many battlefield documents even claimed they were born in the Republic of Tuva, a region in Siberia, but the signatures on the papers were in Korean, blatantly exposing the deceit. The deception didn't stop at falsified documents. North Korean soldiers were ordered to disguise themselves as locals from ethnic minority groups in Russia's Far East, particularly the Buryat people. They were integrated into Russian units to blur their true identities. However, language barriers and distinct physical characteristics quickly exposed the ruse to Ukrainian intelligence and international observers. Russia has implemented strict counterintelligence measures to protect the secrecy of North Korean troops' presence. Upon arrival in the deployment zones, North Korean soldiers had their phones and personal communication devices confiscated. Any potentially sensitive information was tightly controlled by the Federal Security Service, FSB. Russian units in these areas also underwent special inspections to ensure that the presence of North Korean soldiers remained hidden, even from other Russian troops. A circulating video even showed a soldier immediately instructing a North Korean to put on a mask. This situation created a barrier not only between North Korean and Russian soldiers, but also among the North Koreans themselves. Everything was orchestrated to obscure the reality that Moscow had to rely on foreign forces in its war in Ukraine. Even the slightest breach of secrecy was met with harsh punishment to maintain absolute confidentiality. Furthermore, the North Korean soldiers deployed to Russia faced extremely harsh combat conditions, which quickly deteriorated their physical and mental health. Reports indicated that their rations consisted primarily of low-quality dry food like ground corn or pickled cabbage, insufficient to sustain them for heavy labor. In some instances, soldiers resorted to eating dog meat, the only available source of sustenance, to survive. This malnutrition was compounded by grueling tasks in the freezing conditions of the Kursk battlefield, where temperatures frequently dropped below -10 degrees Celsius. A former North Korean soldier who defected revealed that many of his comrades were unable to complete tasks like trench digging or ammunition transport due to exhaustion and starvation. In addition to food shortages, North Korean soldiers lacked access to basic medical services. Severely wounded soldiers on the battlefield often went untreated, leading to alarmingly high mortality rates. Intercepted information by Ukraine's security service, SBU, included an account from a nurse at a Moscow hospital. We receive waves of wounded North Korean soldiers from Kursk. Many of them are already dead by the time they reach us. We don't have enough medicine or equipment to save them. The language barrier presented another significant challenge for North Korean troops, further isolating them and making them victims of deadly mistakes on the battlefield. Despite being taught around 100 basic Russian military terms, they struggled to understand complex orders or coordinate effectively with Russian counterparts in critical situations. This language gap caused not only minor misunderstandings, but also catastrophic friendly fire incidents on the battlefield. One of the most tragic events occurred in the Kursk region when a group of North Korean soldiers, misunderstanding a signal, mistakenly fired on a Chechen unit allied with Russian forces. The incident resulted in the immediate deaths of 8 Chechen soldiers, exacerbating tensions between the units beyond repair. An intercepted communication by Ukraine's security service described how, after the incident, Russian commanders expressed outrage. Instead of addressing the organizational flaws, they placed all the blame on the North Korean soldiers, individuals thrust into an impossible situation. Cultural differences further exacerbated the divide between North Korean and Russian soldiers. Some Russian troops, mistaking them for Chinese, displayed racially discriminatory behavior. Insults, disdainful looks, and cold treatment became a daily norm. A North Korean defector bitterly recounted, "They don't see us as comrades. We are just the ones tasked with the dirty work and sent to die for them on the battlefield." As the situation grew more dire and Russian forces suffered heavy losses, North Korean soldiers were pushed to the front lines as human shields, facing the brunt of Ukrainian firepower. Ill-equipped, poorly trained, and employing outdated tactics, they stood little chance of survival. Infantry assault formations reminiscent of the Korean War era turned them into easy targets for Ukraine's modern arsenal, including drones and precision-guided artillery. The severe lack of proficiency in handling modern weaponry among North Korean soldiers stemmed from their outdated military training system at home. Most of these troops were trained with Cold War-era weapons, such as older Kalashnikov rifles and handheld grenade launchers, which were no match for the advanced equipment on Ukraine's battlefields. According to South Korean intelligence, North Korea's military training focuses on traditional defensive tactics and guerrilla warfare in mountainous terrain, rather than modern conflicts in open battlefields. Training on heavy weaponry like guided missiles or air defense systems is virtually non-existent. Some soldiers had never even encountered modern military technology, leaving them utterly incapable of countering advanced systems such as drones or precision-guided rocket artillery deployed by Ukraine. On the Kursk front line, a shocking report revealed that over 30 North Korean soldiers were killed within hours during an infantry assault. Footage from Ukrainian special forces captured heartbreaking scenes. North Korean troops running chaotically in panic, unable to retaliate as drones attacked them. In a brief skirmish, 33 North Korean soldiers were wiped out by strikes from lightweight drones, stark evidence of their vulnerability on the battlefield. Notably, North Korea's military training was heavily influenced by the country's impoverished conditions. Many young soldiers experienced severe malnutrition even during training, resulting in weakened physical endurance and significantly reduced ability to cope with the stress of combat. A former North Korean soldier who defected revealed that many of his comrades were too weak to carry full gear on long marches. All these factors have made the rising death toll among North Korean troops unsurprising. Despite their low combat effectiveness, they continue to be deployed. Russian President Vladimir Putin's intentions seem clear: to use this force as expendable units to reduce losses among Russian soldiers. Pushing North Korean troops to the front lines not only helps conserve Russian manpower, but also alleviates the pressure of maintaining sufficient troop numbers across multiple fronts. These actions may seem comprehensible from the perspective of leaders, but what shocks the world is the way Russia is treating these soldiers. No one could have imagined such inhumane behavior still occurring in the 21st century. Even in death, North Korean soldiers endure unimaginable cruelty. According to Ukrainian intelligence reports, the bodies are often concealed, lined up, and transported on tracked vehicles to secret locations. Before leaving the battlefield, the corpses are carefully covered to prevent identification. Drone footage captured by Ukrainian forces shows these bodies neatly arranged in the snow, their faces completely obscured, as if they had never existed. Another report from Ukraine's marine unit, Birds of Magyar, describes the corpses as heavily mutilated and disfigured, clear evidence of Russia's efforts to erase all traces of identity and origin. Russia doesn't stop at hiding the bodies. To completely eliminate evidence, the remains are often burned beyond recognition, their faces melted, and identities erased. These actions are not only a counterintelligence tactic, but also a glaring symbol of Russia's utter disregard for the lives of North Korean soldiers. Instead of being honored, they are reduced to tools in a web of lies, even in death. Witnessing the horrors inflicted on their comrades by Russian forces, Ukraine has decided to exploit this situation. This effort is part of the I Want to Live campaign, launched in 2022 shortly after Russia's special military operation began in Ukraine. The goal of the campaign isn't just to persuade enemy soldiers to surrender, but also to ensure their safety and offer them a chance to rebuild their lives. According to Ukrainian intelligence, the program has seen success, with hundreds of Russian soldiers surrendering in previous years. Now, Kyiv is shifting its focus to North Korean forces, troops who have been exploited and sacrificed meaninglessly on the battlefield by Russia. Ukraine leverages the dire circumstances of North Korean soldiers and the harsh truths about their treatment by Russia to encourage defections. President Volodymyr Zelensky has spoken firmly. There is no reason for Koreans to fight and die for Putin. Even in death, Russia will only mock them. This is not just a message, but also a psychological strategy to expose Russia's brutality while offering North Korean soldiers an alternative, a chance to survive. Ukrainian intelligence agencies have launched a series of bold measures to reach out to North Korean troops. They use drones to drop leaflets, artillery shells containing surrender messages, and videos distributed through media channels. The leaflets not only carry appeals to surrender, but also provide detailed, step-by-step instructions on how to do so safely. One leaflet reads, "Kim Il-sung would not want you to fight and die for the Russian Empire. This is your only chance for survival and freedom." In a video released by Ukraine, a North Korean defector, now fighting alongside Ukrainian forces, made a direct plea to his comrades. "Lay down your weapons. This is your only chance to survive and be free." The accompanying text emphasized that defectors would be protected from the control of the North Korean regime and could start a new life free from exploitation. However, persuading North Korean soldiers to defect is no simple task. Their loyalty to the regime, deeply ingrained through years of harsh indoctrination, remains the biggest obstacle. In North Korea, military service is not just a personal responsibility, but also a reflection of the family's loyalty to the state. Defection is seen not only as betrayal, but also as bringing severe consequences for the soldier's family back home. In some cases, North Korean soldiers are even trained to commit suicide rather than be captured, a measure to preserve their family's honor and ensure absolute loyalty to the regime. This tight control makes defection an enormous challenge. For many North Korean soldiers, the only viable option is to continue fighting, even if it means facing death and the mutilation of both their bodies and dignity afterward. Meanwhile, Ukraine persists in its efforts to break these chains, not only to weaken Russia's military, but also to offer a lifeline to those abandoned by both regimes. If reports of North Korea preparing to deploy an additional 50,000 or even 100,000 soldiers to Russia turn out to be true, it would mark a dangerous escalation in the collaboration between Pyongyang and Moscow. These numbers not only amplify the scale of the humanitarian tragedy, but also raise serious questions about the long-term strategies of both Kim Jong Un and Vladimir Putin. For North Korea, Kim Jong Un may view the deployment of additional troops as a political leverage to strengthen ties with Russia. Facing economic isolation and pressure from the international community, North Korea is wagering on manpower to secure strategic support from Moscow. This could include food aid, military technology assistance, or backing in international diplomatic matters. However, the price Pyongyang pays for this gamble is the lives of tens of thousands of soldiers, a cost the regime seems willing to bear. From Russia's perspective, accepting more North Korean soldiers could be seen as a temporary solution to address its severe manpower shortages in the military. However, the problem lies in the fact that these troops are poorly trained, unfamiliar with modern tactics, and have already proven ineffective in previous conflicts. If their numbers swell to tens of thousands, the logistical, management, and internal tensions within mixed units will become increasingly burdensome. As the number of North Korean soldiers rises, the battlefield risks turning into an even greater humanitarian disaster. While Kim Jong Un and Vladimir Putin may see short-term benefits in this partnership, the price will be paid in human lives, tens of thousands of individuals turned into pawns in the power plays of two regimes. Thousands of North Korean troops could continue to be pushed to the front lines as cannon fodder, resulting in staggering casualties. And the world may witness horrors far worse than anything seen so far. Perhaps what we see now is only the tip of the iceberg. How many more terrible truths are the Russians hiding? How much deeper does this tragedy go? The story of North Korean soldiers is not just a grim chapter in the Russia-Ukraine war, but also a stark revelation of the inhumane brutality of both regimes. Moscow and Pyongyang show no regard for the lives of these soldiers. They are exploited, turned into tools of war, and ultimately sacrificed without any honor or remembrance. But a larger question looms. Will the mounting losses and international outrage force Kim Jong Un and Vladimir Putin to change their strategies? Or will they continue to send more innocent lives into this slaughter, regardless of the cost? As the world witnesses the horrors of the battlefield and the suffering of North Korean soldiers, can global indignation shake the foundations of regimes that treat human lives as easily replaceable pawns? What are your thoughts on this matter? Share your opinion in the comments below.